We have a lot to cover in today's video, including the latest on Alex DeBrincat. What is holding up a trade out of the nation's capital in Canada? Where is he likely going to go? Is it still Detroit? We'll discuss all the possibilities, possibly of trade talk around the Carolina Hurricanes, Philadelphia Flyers, the Florida Panthers, and the Winnipeg Jets. Plus, we have several signings, including a few rookie contracts as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover today. Let's first start with some of the signings from around the league. We don't have a whole lot of action going on in the free agent frenzy world right now, but there's still a few things ticking around. The Pittsburgh Penguins today announced that they've signed veteran forward Andreas Johnsson to a one-year deal worth $800,000. Of course, Johnsson, very familiar with Kyle Dubas from their time in Toronto together. Johnsson went on to play with the Devils and a few other teams, and looking for a first start. This past year, I believe he had very little or not a lot of NHL action, so we'll see. He still had a very solid year in the American Hockey League, though. He's got to prove it, and he's too good for the American Hockey League almost. Like there's no point in him staying there. He's not going to develop and get better, but yet the NHL has been a tough place for him to stick. He did have a good start to his career in Toronto, and then things kind of have fallen off since he left. So we'll see how things work out for him. With the Penguins, the Kings today announced that they've re-signed RFA forward Akil Thomas. He gets a one-year contract extension at $775,000. The Arizona Coyotes also announced the signing for a younger player, Nathan Smith. He gets a one-year, two-way deal, $775,000 at the NHL level, $115,000 at the American Hockey League level. The Red Wings today announced that they've signed goalie John Lufferman. He's a 26-year-old undrafted player. Born and raised in Michigan, went to Michigan State University. He's actually played within the Red Wings system for the past 2 seasons, but mostly at the East Coast League, a little bit of AHL time. But of course, there were no NHL contracts. There were only minor league deals, and now he gets a one-year contract as well. So he's actually be eligible to go to the NHL. I don't suspect he will, but at least he's officially now on the main roster, main organization here with Detroit. In the Philadelphia Flyers today have announced that they've signed third-round pick from the 2021 NHL draft goaltender Alexei Kolosov. So I'll be curious to see. Hopefully they don't run into any issues with him coming to North America. Now, of course, he gets his 3-year entry-level contract, and this is actually the same day that we get confirmation that Flyers goaltender Ivan Fedotov, who they had signed previously, remember last year he had signed to go to be part of the Flyers, and then he got apprehended by Russian military police or whatever it was, and ended up having to do some time with the military, and now he's being forced to sign and stay in the KHL. He signed a 2-year contract that was announced today with CSKA. So, I don't know. Well, hopefully that, because I mean, at this point, the KHL and the Russians in this case are not really, honoring their pro contracts in North America. Now, there's no transfer agreement per se, but there's kind of like an unwritten rule that you kind of honor each other's contracts and things like that. But I don't know. It was a really awkward, weird scenario with Fedotov. I just hope the Flyers don't run into a similar scenario here with Kolosov. In this case, another Russian goaltender that they have here in their system. Now, another trade that we're expecting to see here probably tomorrow should be the Philadelphia Flyers and the Carolina Hurricanes hooking up on a deal to send Rumours Deangelo back to the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, obviously, this is a trade that's been discussed in the rumor mill dating back a few weeks ago before the draft. It never came to be. The reason for that was that back a year ago today, that the Hurricanes traded Deangelo to the Flyers. Now, of course, at that point, though, he was needing a contract. So he technically didn't sign his contract with Carolina. He signed it with Philadelphia, but you cannot trade a player back to the same team within a year and do retained salary. So the NHL had previously rejected this deal going through, so that's why they had to wait. So tomorrow will be one day past the 1-year mark, so technically there's nothing they can say about it, but technically, Deangelo will go back to Carolina, and the Flyers are expected to retain 50%. I mean, obviously, this is not something that was cooked up ahead of time in a way to save Carolina cap space or anything like that. This is a case where Carolina didn't think they could afford to keep him last year. He goes off and signs with the Flyers, basically through what they traded his rights. And, at the end of the day here, things didn't work out. And I don't think that anybody could have predicted the way things went in Philly this past season. And they ended up with all the changes that they did and now going through a full rebuild. So they're certainly on the up and up. But that deal should be going through tomorrow. I'm not sure what time of day or anything, but we should get that confirmed here very shortly. So expect the Deangelo deal to be complete. When it comes to the Carolina Hurricanes, there's also some other things they're working on. Because if you think about it here, adding Deangelo back to the mix, they still have Orlov, who they just signed in free agency, Brent Burns, Jacob Slavin, Brett Pesce, Brady Shea, Jalen Chatfield, who had a really solid, good season last year for them. And they also re-signed Dylan Coughlin. Now, Coughlin's kind of like a spare part almost, but even without Coughlin, that's still 7 regular NHL defensemen. You bring back Orlov and Deangelo here into the mix. So at this point, we know that contract negotiations have not gone well with Brett Pesce. There's been some talk about him being moved. And at this point, if they bring Deangelo back tomorrow like they're expected to, then that gives Burns and Deangelo the top 2 spots really on the right side in the decor. They could certainly, learn to part ways with Pesce. Now, Brady Shea also has 1 year left on his deal. I guess it's possible they could, maybe go a different route here, trade Shea and try to keep Pesce. But we haven't really heard a whole lot about contract extension talks with Shea, but Pesce has not gone well. And we know Carolina does not like to overpay, so it's sounding more and more likely that a Pesce trade will come together. Now, the 2 teams that are mostly linked to Pesce right now are in Dallas and Nashville. Not sure exactly what kind of return price the Hurricanes would be requesting in this kind of trade, but right now they're the 2 teams that are kind of kicking tires on this idea and are linked to that player. So we'll see how things go on that front. The Winnipeg Jets, of course, we know they're still an active team out there, looking for guys like Scheifele and Hellebuck, how to handle their futures, and are they going to move? Are they going to stay? Hellebuck already made it clear he's not going to re-sign, so I suspect that at some point he's going to be moved sooner than later. Scheifele's a little less clear, but apparently the Jets are still looking to surround their other guys with some more support. And even though I'm not convinced that this player is going to be dealt, they do apparently have heavy interest in Lawson Crouse in Arizona, according to the fourthperiod.com. Now, of course, Lawson Crouse has had back-to-back 20-goal seasons. He's signed for 4 more years at just over $4 million. Good contract, good physical player, still in his prime years. So I understand the interest. Arizona, though, recently has made an effort to add some more quality NHL talent to their roster. And I think because of the whole arena situation, we still are waiting clarity. We probably won't get more of an update on that scenario probably until I think they were hoping to have something more firm by the time the season starts. I give it to about halfway through next season. If there's nothing firm in place by that point, that's when I think we're going to start hearing the whispers and the more talk about relocation if nothing's come together by then. So they still have time, but the players are frustrated. We know this. And some of the players were, sound like they kind of want it out. At the very least, they want a plan to, something. So, but then part of that as well was that they not only didn't have a clear situation with the arena, they also were getting tired of losing and not having a competitive team. So the ownership there and the management seem to have taken the approach that they're going to try to be a little bit more competitive this year. I don't expect them to be a playoff team. I don't expect them to get out of the draft lottery, but I do expect them to win a few more games and be a little more competitive than they were last year. And they've made some moves to add a little bit more quality pieces. So to trade out Lawson Crouse, who the Jets are really interested in, not saying it won't happen. I just think the odds are very likely, or less, not likely, sorry. Unless Crouse or Clayton Keller, any of these guys go to the Coyotes and demand a trade, I think that would be the only way we'd see it. And even then, look what happened with Chychrun. That drug on for a long, extended time. Armstrong was more than willing to be patient and wait until he got what he wanted. So I don't think we're going to see this happen, but I don't blame Winnipeg for being interested in kind of trying to push, an option towards Arizona to make a deal. I'm just not convinced they're going to accept it. And another name as well to watch, apparently Florida is still, has Sam Reinhart's name out there. Now, I'm not convinced as well they absolutely want to trade Reinhart, so they want to get rid of him or anything like that. But like many teams, of course, there's a lot of salary cap implications, and they're looking to make some upgrades mostly to their back end is what it looks like. So Reinhart would be one of the players that, might have to be moved. Now, within their forward group, there's a lot of players that are not making an outrageous amount of money, that are all like your, really middle range players, and to some extent, like, looking at your Sam Bennett's, your Carter Verhaeghes, your Sam Reinhart's, all these guys, they moved to Claire already. And Reinhart might be a guy because he's not far away. I believe he's a year away from an extension. If he's going to be wanting a big raise, or at least some bit more of a raise, he's already at over $6 billion now, so it might get a little bit more expensive to keep around anyway longer term. So I think that's part of the reason why his name is out there. So if they're going to move him, they want always a big piece for the back end. Hard to say exactly how that would work out, but I know some teams that have been late to having some interest. Doesn't mean that they're going to be pushing forward. The Avalanche were a team that were brought up by the fourth period as well, looking at still trying to possibly fill their number 2 center spot. There was some talk of the Senators, depending on how the DeBrincat trade goes down, if they're not able to get Tarasenko or what comes back from DeBrincat, but they might be interested because they want to add another top 6 piece as well. And then there was a few other teams too. So don't be surprised if Reinhart's name is out there. I'm not 100% sure or convinced it's going to actually lead to a trade, but if the right offer comes along, we know Bill Zito's not afraid to pull the trigger. Now, with DeBrincat, speaking of Ottawa and DeBrincat, I want to take a look at what's going on there. There's 2 teams that have been heavily linked at this point. The main one with the front runner here seems to be Detroit, but the Islanders are still very much in the mix as well. Now, the latest from Detroit Hockey Now, their hockey website, and their writers are saying, essentially the holdup here is Steve Yzerman and the agent for DeBrincat cannot come to terms on a contract. It sounds like at this point that Yzerman does not want to pay DeBrincat more than Dylan Larkin, and he does not want to give him an 8-year term. Now, he fought hard on Larkin to get an 8-year term as well, and he eventually did cave. Larkin got 8 years and 8.7. So that's a fresh new contract. He's a centerman, their best player, their captain. It sounds like this is not a player they're willing to overpay on for their team to make more than him. So we know DeBrincat's qualifying offer was $9 million. It's believed he's looking for something comparable to that in a long-term deal. If Yzerman doesn't want to give it, then it might be difficult to work this out. I mean, it's believed that there's a couple of different options, possibly going back to Ottawa, whether it be Jonathan Bergeron, or maybe a guy like Dominic Kubalik, along with prospects of picks. Probably like the Bruins first rounder for next year might be on the table. Like, that's likely what kind of package they're looking at. It's believed that there's multiple offers that they can proceed with, but the contract is a huge issue here. So obviously if Detroit's not going to want to pay DeBrincat what he wants, that might not lead to a deal. So I do know another team, another GM who seems to love giving out long-term deals, and that's Lou Lamoriello. So I do wonder at what point here that Pierre Dorion and the Senators kind of pivot back to the Islanders and maybe consider doing something there. Of course, at the same time, if they come up and say, we'll pay, 8 times 8.8 or 8.6 or something like that, and of course, they probably have a threshold they don't want to go over as well after just signing, Barzal and Horvat of their deals. Obviously those guys can be centermen as well, so their centers always get paid more. The rumored package before for the Islanders and the Senators to hook up on a trade was sending Jean-Gabriel Pageau back to Ottawa along with Oliver Wahlstrom and likely a second-round pick. I think if they give 2 players, then they won't necessarily have to give a first-rounder, but a second-rounder. I mean, Wahlstrom's still a young prospect. He's not really a prospect anymore, but he's still like not a fully established player to his full potential. If they like Wahlstrom and Pageau, and that may not sound like the greatest package, but at the same time, they don't have a ton of leverage here. And Wahlstrom could still be a really good player. If Wahlstrom could fit that second line spot and Pageau could move to the third and really strengthen that line, they would be a much better team. But the wild card is can Wahlstrom even be a 20-25 goal guy in the short term? That's the question that we do not know. There was some speculation, too, that it could be a third team involved to take part of Pageau's contract, just as a broker, basically, to do retained salary on Pageau. It's not to have him making $5 million going to Ottawa, knock him down to about 3.5. which would be very good for their cap situation as well. Because Wallstrom was not going to make a ton of money, at least not right away, if they could sign, because he still needs to be signed. If they had Pageau at like $3.5 million, and then they had Wallstrom for, 1.5, $2 million or something smaller like that, then that still leaves them room to bring in another free agent to really have a much deeper forward group, which not a terrible thing. Like I said, they don't have a lot of leverage. They need to get this distraction under the organization and just kind of cut the losses and call it a day. I think either of these offers between these two teams would be fine, but it's just a matter of either of these GMs are going to give DeBrincat the contract he wants, and then is he going to accept it? I know his preference is probably going to Detroit because he's from Michigan. I know a lot of Sens fans would prefer that he not go within the same division. I do think the Detroit offer might give them a better package, but we'll have to see on that. But either way, I wonder at what point does Lou swoop in here with a long-term offer, because this seems to be his motive. Like that's just how he operates. Look at the long-term deals he's given out to this team already. Pierre Engvall and Scott Mayfield. Why wouldn't he be comfortable giving one to Alex DeBrincat? Makes you wonder. Will they have to pivot to Long Island? Time will tell. Let me know your thoughts on that and everything else discussed here today. Down in the comments, we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.